Primary election day in Florida is just a week away.
It's time to meet the candidates.
This original program is provided as a public service by WSRE, the League of Women Voters, and Pensacola State College.
Good evening and welcome to Rally 2018. I'm Molly Barrows with WSRE TV.
And I'm Sandra Averhart with WUWF Public Media.
And this is the second of 3 nights of Rally 2018, election coverage on WSRE TV, PBS for the Gulf Coast.
Rally allows you the opportunity to meet the candidates from primary races in Escambia, Santa Rosa, and Okaloosa counties, as well as candidates in the state races that impact these counties. This broadcast tonight also being simulcast on News Radio 1620 AM and FM 92.3.
And tonight, the spotlight is on school board district races in Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, and Escambia counties. We will begin with Okaloosa School Board Districts 1, 3, and 5. We will then move to Santa Rosa County School Board Districts 1, 3, and 5, followed by Escambia School Board District races 1, 2, and 3.
Wednesday night, we will cover primary races in Santa Rosa County for County Commission District 2 and 4, as well as Escambia County Commission Districts 2 and 4. We will conclude with the race for Mayor of Pensacola.
And the questions we'll put before the candidates this evening were provided to us by the League of Women Voters from the Pensacola Bay Area, as well as Okaloosa and Walton counties.
The candidates have not seen the questions. They will each be asked the same questions, and they will have 45 seconds to respond. Following the question and answer session, each candidate will have an additional 45 seconds to deliver a closing statement.
And it is time to get started with those questions for the candidates. We are going to begin in Okaloosa County with the race for School Board District 1.
There are 2 candidates in the race for Okaloosa School Board District 1. Mr. Willie Harmon is not attending Rally tonight, but Mr. Lamar White is here to receive the questions. Welcome, Mr. White.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, we will get started with our first question. There is a nationwide teacher shortage. 7% of new teachers leave the field entirely after 3 or fewer years on the job. And Florida is ranked 5th from the bottom in a 2017 study ranking the best and worst states for teachers. What measures would you propose to reverse these trends in Okaloosa County?
Well, thank you, Sandra. We have worked very, very hard to be able to recruit and certainly to retain our excellent educators in the Okaloosa school system. One of the things that we have done is we have held various kinds of recruitment fairs in different locations so that we can attract the kinds of folks that we would like to be able to teach our children. We have been very, very fortunate in Okaloosa County because we are the home of the largest research and development Air Force base in the free world, and consequently because of that we've been able to retain outstanding educators, and I'd like to say that we have an excellent school system in Okaloosa County by every measure. Folks know that student academic performance is at the highest levels in Okaloosa.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Our second question tonight. In March, Governor Rick Scott signed a school safety bill that created a Guardian program that enables teachers and other school employees to participate, or rather in participating districts, to carry handguns at school if they complete law enforcement training. Would you support implementing such a program in Okaloosa County schools? Why or why not?
Thank you for that question, Sandra. And that is, even though my opponent has not shown tonight and has also missed various other kinds of opportunities, I have said in other kinds of public gatherings and public meetings that I support the premise of that legislation, and certainly, as you know from the question, that law is very specific and basically stipulates that every sheriff in the state of Florida is capable of establishing such a program. And I have said publicly, and will say again tonight, that should our sheriff implement that particular program, I would support that. That program has been implemented in Polk County. Our sheriff has not implemented that program, and I support his decision.
Next question for you. Thank you. Amendment 8, proposed Amendment 8 mandates term limits of 8 years for all school boards, allows the state to create public schools, something only local school boards currently can do, and requires schools to teach civic literacy. Do you support Amendment 8? Why or why not?
Well, yes, there are, as you already indicated, Sandra, there are different components to Amendment 8, and yes, I do support it. Regarding term limits, I have already publicly stated 4 years ago when I first ran for this office and first appeared here, I was elected, and I stated at that time that should the public wish for me to serve, that I would serve for 8 years. This would be the second term should they vote for me to remain in office, but that I have term limited myself. Certainly I support civic education. We have done well there, but I do understand, and I'm sure you will share, that Amendment 8, as of this time, has been struck from the ballot. We will still have to wait to see whether or not through some kind of appeal that it may stay.
All right, thank you. We're now up to question 4 for Mr. Lamar White. He is a candidate for Okaloosa County School Board District 1. Question 4, Mr. White. More than half of our county schools are over 50 years old. What are your plans to fund the repair and replacement of aging school infrastructure since the sales tax referendum was tabled? Specifically, what would you recommend cutting from the current budget?
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, it's a definite fact that our facilities are, for lack of a better word, I will say antiquated. Having worked as a school principal for the Okaloosa School District for 26 years, I have a first-hand experience in the duct tape and Band-Aids and chewing gum that seem to hold things together these days. You're correct, our sales tax was tabled. We had a citizens group that came forward that was willing to lead that effort. However, due to some issues that were covered extensively in the media, that same group came forward and asked to withdraw their efforts on that particular initiative. I have voted for the sales tax to be placed as a referendum in the past, and I would do so again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. Would you support expanding STEM programs to other schools so they are more widely available and more students can take advantage of them without actually transferring schools? Why or why not?
Yes, of course I would support that. I have supported that. As a school principal, I have actually implemented STEM programs at the schools that I worked at. One of the reasons I did so was because I didn't want my students transferring to another school. So to answer your question is yes, I have, and I will support those programs at other schools in the future.
All right, next question for you. Insufficient sleep in adolescents has been shown to be associated with a wide variety of adverse outcomes, from poor mental and physical health to behavioral problems and lower academic grades. If elected, or re-elected in your case, would you support recommendations to the school district regarding adjustment of school time? And of course, we're talking delaying high school start times and moving up elementary and middle school start times.
Well, thank you for the question, and it's a broad question. Let me say, Sandra, that the research regarding later start times, particularly for adolescent students and high school students, is very compelling. However, what I would point out, and I think this is good information for the viewers and for the voters as well, the school board, by statute, responds to the recommendations of the superintendent. And so I think the way that such innovation, if you will, might be implemented would be, should the superintendent direct her staff to bring forward such recommendations to the school board that would include such things as cost, issues associated with after-school programs and so forth, the school board would be empowered to consider that recommendation.
All right, we're up to our final question for Mr. White tonight, and it is, according to the DCF Council on Homelessness 2017 annual report, there are 849 homeless students in Okaloosa County, and that is out of 30,000 total, or about 3%. What is your plan to ensure attendance and graduation and to advocate for adequate shelter to serve them?
Well, I appreciate the question, Sandra, and certainly I know you referenced homelessness, but the question in my mind is really broader than that. What we have seen in Okaloosa County, and I'm sure surrounding counties in the state of Florida has seen the same, is we have seen a increase in the number of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so poverty is in fact a real issue, and I think that many of the viewers and those folks that follow education recognize the association between poverty and academic performance and all the kinds of issues that go along with that. But to answer your question directly, we have folks engaged and employed in the school system, and their purpose and mission is to make sure that we provide the services and outreach to those students that are homeless.
All right, thank you. And that is all the questions we have for Mr. White this evening. It is now time for closing statements. And Mr. White, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you, Sandra. I am seeking re-election to the Okaloosa School Board for District 1. My opponent, Willie Harmon, has repeatedly been missing in action, and I think that the voters should probably expect the same should he be elected. My efforts to increase student instructional time were successful. I am a conservative who moved forward the placing of "In God We Trust" in every school, and I have had multiple endorsements. I have served as the school board chairman since 2016. The school board is held in high regard by the grand jury, the sheriff's department, and the media. The school board is the only entity that has moved forward corrective actions. I offered the best credentials, the best experience, and the best results. Please visit electlamarwhite.com and vote to re-elect Dr. Lamar White to the Okaloosa School Board, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. And we're now going to take a quick break from Rally 2018. We'll continue with district races for Okaloosa County School Board when we come back.
Thanks for watching this year's rally event on WSRE TV. I'm Mary Blackwell, President of the League of Women Voters of Okaloosa and Walton Counties. For decades, the Okaloosa, Walton, and Pensacola Bay Area Leagues have provided questions for events like tonight's forum as a service to our local communities. The success of our democracy depends on active participation by informed citizens, which begins with voting. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, which means we don't support or oppose parties or candidates. This rally is one way for us to make accurate and nonpartisan information available to voters. You can also contact us for explanations of amendments, merit retention of judges, and other ballot issues. We invite women and men to attend our public events or join us as members of League. Please see our website for more information or to contact us. And please remember to be an informed voter this year.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Okaloosa County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Okaloosa County Supervisor of Elections office. You can write, phone, fax, email, log on to their website, or visit the supervisor's office locations in Crestview and Fort Walton Beach. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections offices by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Saturday, August 18th through Saturday, August 25th at the 5 locations listed on screen. Hours for early voting are 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. each day. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place at your polling location from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered. Be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. Welcome back to Rally 2018, where candidates in the upcoming primary election get a chance to weigh in on the issues. We continue now with the race for Okaloosa County School Board District 3.
There are 3 candidates in this race. We will introduce them in alphabetical order, beginning with Mr. Albie D. Clendenin IV. Seated next to him is Miss Linda Ivanchik. And seated next to her is Mr. Joe Slusser. Candidates, welcome.
All right, and we begin our first question with Mr. Clendenin. Again, we are starting in alphabetical order. And Mr. Clendenin, here you are. In March, Governor Scott signed a school safety bill that created a guardian program that enables teachers and other school employees in participating districts to carry handguns at school if they complete law enforcement training. Would you support implementing such a program in Okaloosa County schools? Why or why not?
At this time, I respect our sheriff's decision to not implement the Guardian program simply because it will not only take away a lot of time from instruction time because of the required amount of training for each of our teachers, but also because of the implemented costs it would take for us to be able to properly implement that program. So at this time, I do not support the Guardian program moving forward, but if our sheriff were to want to move forward with the Guardian program, I would definitely want to come up with a solution. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clendenin. Ms. Ivanchek, the question goes to you now, or would you like for me to repeat it?
No, I've got it. Thank you. I do not support the Guardian program. I don't, as a recent teacher who just retired, I can't imagine having a firearm in the classroom. I think that would set up a lot more safety problems with teachers being armed. I understand the purpose of the Guardian program so that we can have additional people who are armed in case of a situation. I respect that the Okaloosa County Sheriff has said that he's not going to enact that at this time. Certainly, if he feels that it should be enacted, then I would follow along with that because he is the expert in that field. But right now, I'm glad that we are not going to have teachers armed in the classrooms.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ivanchek. Mr. Slusser, the question now goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, I've got it. Thank you. You know, the Guardian program is an option for each and every sheriff in the state. And our sheriff, Larry Ashley, has chosen not to institute the Guardian program. I'm not in favor of arming teachers, but the Guardian program goes way beyond that. It provides training for these people. If we have military in our schools, some retired military and people that have special tactics training, those people, if they were to be armed, we could trust in that. But having teachers armed, teachers are nurturers. They're not the people that we want to have guns, and they really do not want to have guns. So I'm not in favor of the Guardian program, but the sheriff is the authority on that. He is the expert, and my sons are involved in law enforcement, and they also agree with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Slusser. And for our next question, we begin with Ms. Ivanchek. There's a nationwide teacher shortage. 7% of new teachers leave the field entirely after just a few years on the job. Florida ranked 5th from the bottom in a recent study, ranking the best and worst states for teachers. What measures would you propose to reverse these trends in Okaloosa County?
Well, I've seen that. As I said, I just recently retired from the classroom, and I saw a lot of teachers come and go, mainly in those early years. I don't believe we're giving the support to new teachers that we need. Also, I believe we need to be working with our local colleges and universities to build those education programs and to make sure that those teachers are trained before they come in. I know that we've had teachers come into the profession from a variety of backgrounds, which is fine, but I don't know that they have the training that they need or have the on-hands experience before they take over a classroom. So I would like to see that those two things happen. One, to work with our universities and colleges and make sure that they're trained.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ivanchek. Mr. Slusser, the question now goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, ma'am, I've got it. Thank you.
Okay.
In order to have more and better qualified applicants for the schools to have teachers, we need to go back into the feeder program, which are the universities. Make it more lucrative for teachers to go into the profession. The pay is way down the list, but we need to increase the pay, the benefits, and also teachers were held in high esteem many years ago when I first started teaching, and I think that has slipped. We need to keep the teachers that go in and find ways to motivate them to go to master's degrees, and the pay needs to be commensurate to that. We need to improve our education system, and it needs to start from the ground up. We need to promote and the teaching profession for what it really is.
Thank you, Mr. Slusser. All right, Mr. Clendenin.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. We talked about a nationwide teacher shortage. 7% of new teachers leave the field entirely after just a few years. There's a recent study ranking Florida 5th from the bottom, from best to worst states for teachers. What measures would you propose to reverse those trends in Okaloosa County?
The number thing we need to do is we need to support our new teachers when they come into the classroom. As a student and a recent graduate from Baker School in Okaloosa County, I've seen firsthand how some of our teachers that were brand new at our school didn't get the support they need, and then they were out the next year, and then that principal was either struggling to find a teacher who could fill that position, or they left at the end of the semester, and then those kids were stuck with an interim substitute who wasn't able to properly teach the course, and then those kids have lost half a year without getting proper teaching. So when it comes to making sure that we have teachers in our classrooms, we need to make sure that we get the best that we can, and sadly, because the pay is so low, it's a labor of love. I know that personally because my mother is a teacher here in our great school district. So we need to do whatever we can to make it more lucrative to be a teacher in our district, and we need to do whatever we can to get our teachers the proper training they need.
Thank you, Mr. Clendenin.
All right, we're now up to question 3 for our candidates, and we'll begin with Mr. Slusser. This one to you first. Amendment 8, proposed Amendment 8 mandates term limits of 8 years for all school boards, allows the state to create public schools, something only local school boards can do currently, and requires schools to teach civic literacy. Do you support Amendment 8?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question. That was one of the things we've been discussing lately because they put on the tail end of that. The first thing was the term limits for school board members, and then teaching civics, which we currently do in this county, the county, Okaloosa County, we teach civics. But they were going to have the opportunity for the state to set up charter schools with no board control. And so it would have been a yes, yes, no, and we were telling pretty much people to vote no on this. But today, and when I went out to get my paper early this morning, I saw on the front page that a judge has struck that down now, that Amendment 8 has to be removed. So we won't have to be concerned about that. But no, we don't need the state coming in and setting up charter schools without control from our own local school board.
All right, thank you, thank you. And to you now, Mr. Clendenin, what is your position on Amendment 8?
Well, I do agree with term limits for school board members simply because I'm fresh into politics and I can see how having term limits would make it easier for someone to enter into being able to bring a new voice to our school boards. And I also really do support civics education in our classrooms. Luckily, in Okaloosa County, you already do a really great job with supporting civics education and requiring it. But sadly, the charters giving the state the power to grant charter schools is simply a disservice to all of our local school districts. So luckily that Amendment 8 is being removed off the ballot. I actually saw that last night online. Everybody was celebrating in the education community because, well, public education is under attack here in the state of Florida, and luckily Amendment 8 is being taken out of the ballot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And to you now, Ms. Ivanchik, Amendment 8.
Yes, well, similar to my opponents, I agree. The 3 pieces of Amendment 8 to me never did coordinate at all. They never really made any sense. They're dealing with totally different things. I would agree with term limits for school board members. We've been having the civics in classes for a long, long time, and so that's no problem. But I think it's that third piece, and my fear was that oftentimes voters do not read through all the amendments. So I'm glad to see that it's been struck off the ballot because I think it was misleading.
All right, thank you. We're up to question number 4 now for our candidates. It'll go to you first, Mr. Clendenin. More than half of our county schools are over 50 years old. What are your plans to fund the repair and/or replacement of aging school infrastructure since the sales tax referendum was tabled? And specifically, what would you recommend cutting from the budget to pay for it?
So I actually wouldn't recommend a cut. I'd actually recommend creating a new program. One of the things that is kind of just mind-boggling in our district is that we have 2 separate insurance pools for our teachers, and then we have one for our county administrators, which not only makes the insurance more expensive, it makes it to where a lot of our teachers can't afford to use the county insurance, but also makes it more expensive for the county, because then that means that we're paying for something that our teachers don't use. So what I would like to implement is an insurance buyout program. That way our teachers would be able to get, say, a $1,000 stipend from the district, and then they wouldn't necessarily get the insurance benefit anymore, and that's up to them, of course, but that would not only help us save a lot of money, it would make things a lot better for our teachers as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ivanchik, what would you recommend cutting from the current budget to pay for the repair or replacement of aging school infrastructure?
Well, I think we need to look at our employee pool. Paying for labor is the most expensive thing for any district or any business for that matter. And I believe that we have a district management that's top heavy with a lot of people with large salaries. And even though salary money is in a different category than what you would have with capital outlay and infrastructure, I still think shifting some of the funds would help alleviate the problem. Besides that, I think we need to have a list of priorities. Each school with a principal or a committee should see what is the highest priority for infrastructure at that school and go from there.
All right, thank you. And finally to you, Mr. Slusser, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
All right. More than half our county schools are over 50 years old. What are your plans to fund the repair and or replacement of aging school infrastructure since the sales tax referendum was tabled? And specifically, what would you recommend to cut from the current budget to pay for it?
Yes, well, you know, when we get to look at the budget, and I have training in budget and policy and curriculum, when we look at the budget, we have to look and see where we can tighten our belts. A lot of times when we as family leaders and family members, we've had to tighten our belts, and that's what we need to do with this budget. We need to look at it and see where it can be tweaked and money can be taken from. You know, we are kind of top heavy at the Okaloosa School Board, the school district. We need to find a way to take the money and put it to its best use. Also, in a lot of the schools, they have situations where maybe they've got leaks and the other one doesn't have that problem. They got cracked walls. We need to find out what the priority for treatment for each one of the individual facilities is. Let the principals and the board, the people at that know, let us know what that situation would be.
Thank you, Mr. Slusser.
All right, we turn now to our last question for these candidates, and we begin with Ms. Ivanchik. Okaloosa County was short 20 school bus drivers at the beginning of the 2017-18 school year. What is your plan to hire and retain qualified bus drivers?
Yes, I know that we have a real problem with keeping bus drivers. I've talked with the bus drivers group and talked about the situation. Their main complaint is that really the buses, this status of the buses. I had one bus driver tell me they just hoped the bus would start. Many times they had to be in a different bus. There's times when there were so many things wrong with the bus and it was scary. So first of all, I think we can attract more bus drivers if we get our equipment in shape. I do know that we have got some buses in and replaced some of those, and that will help. But I also think we need to support those individuals and look at their, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ivanchik. Mr. Slusser, the question now goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, I'm fine with it. Thank you. It's an aging fleet. The other day I was driving down through Crestview and I was behind a bus that was dated 1997. You know, and that's an old bus, but we have a lot of buses that won't start. We have problems with buses and buses breaking down. But it's because of the age and the miles on those buses. But we have to find a way to fund that. And another thing with the bus drivers is not only the fact that they're driving buses with no air conditioning, there's mechanical problems with the buses, is that the bus drivers pay. And if we can find a way to increase the pay and the benefits for our bus drivers, we can keep the bus drivers we have and recruit and keep new bus drivers. It is a hard job. One of the hardest jobs in the district is driving a bus down the road with all those children behind you and try to take care of their safety.
Thank you, Mr. Slusser. Yes. Mr. Clendenin, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okaloosa County was short 20 school bus drivers at the beginning of the 2017-2018 school year. What is your plan to hire and retain qualified school bus drivers?
So one of the things that I would like to look at is, of course, we need to increase our revenue through any which way, whether it be through cuts or through a sales tax down the road. That way we're able to replace our school bus fleet, which is one of the, if not the oldest in the state of Florida. So I think that's part of why our school bus drivers don't want to drive a bus anymore for the school district. And part of it, we do need to look into increasing the pay if we can. Of course, that always goes back to revenue. If we had a magic wand full of revenue, we would fully fund everything, but sadly we just don't have the revenue to be able to fully fund things that we would prefer to do it. So if we can, I would prefer to pay them more and to get them the nice buses that they have. And this, quite frankly, goes back to school safety as well, because those buses are not where they should be when it comes to safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clendenin. Well, we thank you, candidates. That concludes our question and answer session, and it's time now for closing statements. You each have 45 seconds. Continuing in alphabetical order, we last started with Ms. Ivanchek. Mr. Slusser, we begin closing statements with you. Again, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. You need to make an educated choice when you decide for District 3. Do you want someone that's got the experience in policy, curriculum, and budget? You want someone that's got 46 and a half years as an educator? I have been that teacher, I have been that administrator, and I've had many different positions in the school districts I've worked for. We need to have someone with the heart for these kids, someone who's doing it because he or she wants to help the kids. I'm doing it because I want to be an advocate for the kids, the teachers, the parents, and the voters. Someone who will work hard, a conservative voice on that board who will work hard to make sure that our children are taken care of and the best education possible will be presented to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slusser. Mr. Clendenin, 45 seconds.
First off, if you have already voted for me, thank you so much. It means more than you could ever imagine. I never really thought about jumping into politics, but because I am a student in the 21st century, I saw the need. I saw that need for our student voice on our school board. And because we are so far into the 21st century, yet our school district feels antiquated and old because we do have a lot of schools that are older than 50 years, I want to be the advocate for what used to be my fellow students in the school district, to be able to make sure that they get everything that they need, to make sure that they are spoken for on our school board. And as the son of an educator as well in our school district, I've seen how our teachers are just getting buried in paperwork when they should be able to have the time to be able to teach in our classrooms and have that one-on-one time with our teachers and our students. And I just want to do everything I can to help our school district, and I'm in it just simply because I want to do what I can to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clendenin. Ms. Ivanchek. Closing statements now, 45 seconds.
Yes, I want to thank WSRE and the League of Women Voters for having us tonight. This is a great opportunity. Okaloosa voters, for 38 years, you trusted me with your children in my classroom. And I'm asking you to trust me again as a member of the school board. I have the character that a person needs to be on the school board. I am a conservative who will stand up for what is right for all students in our district. In addition, I will be a good public servant and a good steward of your money, your tax dollars, which I think is important. I have the credentials. I have not only an active Florida teaching certificate, but I am national board certified. I have experience in a lot of different things, a lot of different aspects, and I'm asking your vote. So please vote for me for Okaloosa School Board. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ivanchek. Thank you, candidates, for participating tonight. And there is much more to come on Rally 2018.
When we return, the race for Okaloosa School Board, District 5.
There is nothing more important to our democratic process than having an informed electorate voting on Election Day. Good evening, I am Ed Meadows, President of Pensacola State College, thanking you for tuning into this rally, a joint presentation of the League of Women Voters, WSRE TV, and Pensacola State College. Rally allows you the opportunity to watch and listen as this election year's slate of candidates answer the tough questions concerning the needs of our community. WSRE, a service of Pensacola State College, is proud to bring this program to you as a public service. And as always, we invite your comments and suggestions about how we can further fulfill our community obligations. Let's all remember the importance of participating in the governance process by voting in the upcoming election.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Santa Rosa County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Santa Rosa County Supervisor of Elections office by phone, mail, fax, or email. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Monday, August 13th through Saturday, August 25th in Milton, Pace, and at 2 locations in the Greater Gulf Breeze area. Early voting hours each day are 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered, and be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. All right, welcome back to Rally 2018. We'd like to thank the local chapters of the League of Women Voters for providing tonight's questions for the candidates. We turn now to the race for Okaloosa County School Board District 5, and let's meet the candidates. Again, there are 2 candidates in this race in an alphabetical order. Our first candidate is Miss Diane Kelly. Welcome. And seated next to her is Mr. Bran McAllister. And we thank both candidates for joining us tonight. And Ms. Kelly, this question goes first to you. Do you support Amendment 8? Why or why not? We've certainly learned that it is no longer on the ballot as of recently, but this proposed amendment mandated term limits of 8 years for all school boards, allows the state to create public schools, something only local school boards could do currently. What are your thoughts on supporting this? Do you support it? Why or why not?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to answer that question. And by the way, thank you for having us here tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. When Amendment 8 first was brought up, of course, you know, it bundled 3 K-8 initiatives together. And for whatever reason, those 3 bundled items were disparate, in my humble opinion. The first one, term limits for school board members, I have no problem with at all. Two terms is just fine with me. Civics is very, very important to me. As a former teacher of civics and American government, I certainly support the continuation of having civics in our classes. Of course, here in Okaloosa County, we never did away with the teaching of civics or American government in any form. So the one that was concerning, of course, was the one about charter schools. And we're very fortunate in our district that we have quality charter schools, but those we might have in the future might not live up to that quality standard.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Mr. McAllister, this question now goes to you, sir.
Thank you. When I think of Amendment 8, I am all in favor of term limits. I think we have to be careful of having professional politicians, and I think term limits are fine. I'm also strongly supportive of civics literacy, and that was another clause. But we get to the third one, which was that the state would actually then control schools which were not created by a local school district. And what that translates to me is state control of local public schools. I'm not a fan or in favor of control of our local schools by the state. We have our own kids and our funding going to our local schools, and to have that controlled by the state I think is inappropriate. I'm in favor of local control over our local public schools.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAllister. And this next question, we begin with you. More than half of our county schools in Okaloosa County are over 50 years old. What are your plans to fund the repair and replacement of these aging infrastructure buildings since the sales tax referendum was tabled?
Excellent question. The challenge we have, of course, is we've had a funding decrease over time, and we've had continuing increased needs, including infrastructure. I'm not envisioning we're going to get a great plus up in funding in the near future, and therefore the only way to address our issues is to consider how will we raise the money to address very needed infrastructure. Now, if we're not going to get additional funding anytime soon, then the only thing we can do, and what I've been advocating, is that we need to look at our own budget. Not this year's budget, which we're executing, but future budgets, where we have the ability to look at, for example, our organizational structure. We have the ability to look at our contracts. We have the ability to look at many things which we currently are using to pay for, and scrub that budget and free up some money, which would help us with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAllister. Ms. Kelly?
Well, that also is a very good question and one that we have frequently. I believe that our district currently has, in fact, I know that our district, like every other of the 67 districts in the state of Florida, we have a strategic plan that addresses our aging infrastructure needs. And it is a list of each of our buildings and their needs in somewhat of a triage fashion. What is missing, of course, from that strategic plan is the funding stream, and therein lies the problem. So what we must do is follow that plan using contingency funds to the degree that we have possible, and then go ahead. It's not too early to begin to lay the foundation to reinstitute the interest in our sales tax initiative. We can regain that public trust and rebuild those collaborative efforts to do that.
All right, Ms. Kelly, we begin our next question with you. In March, Governor Scott signed the school safety bill that created the Guardian program that enables teachers and other school personnel to carry a weapon if they are trained, complete law enforcement training. Do you support such a program in Okaloosa County?
Here are my feelings on the Guardian program. First of all, I really wish that we lived in a world where the only thing my students had to be afraid of was a bad grade. But since we do not, we have to consider all of these other measures. And as I've said before, schools are microcosms of society, and whatever element you find out in society will be brought into your schools, and you must be prepared for those to the extent that you can. The Guardian program, while it seeks to give the ability to arm teachers, in my opinion, at this point in time, is not the best feasible process to go forward with. I want my teachers in my buildings to be able to focus on the duties that they are required to take care of, which are numerous already. I don't want them burdened with another item such as the weapon item.
Mr. McAllister, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, I've got the question. I've stated consistently that I'm not in favor of wholesale arming of teachers in our schools. But I have said that under very restrictive circumstances where we have individuals who have military or law enforcement experience who are employed in our schools, that they might be trained with recurrent training to carry firearms on our campuses. And that's very well defined in this Guardian program. The challenge, however, is that the local sheriff, our sheriff, Sheriff Ashley, would have to enact that program, and he's decided at this point not to do so. I have actually talked to him about that. I understand his rationale, and of course time will not permit me to go through those reasons, but for the reasons that he stated to me, I support him on that. Should, however, he decide to enact the Guardian program, I'd be very supportive of a very restricted set of cases where we would arm some teachers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McAllister. And we begin our next question with you. There is the nationwide teacher shortage. 7% of new teachers leave the field entirely after 3 or 4 years in the job. Florida ranked 5th from the bottom in a recent study, ranking the worst states for teachers. So what measures would you propose to reverse these trends in Okaloosa County?
Well, there are about 4 things I would do. First of all, we have to have a place where it's a good place to work, and so we can attract people, and that means we have to have good facilities, and we've already talked about the challenges with our infrastructure. Second thing is we need all, in a leadership role, make sure our teachers understand that we appreciate them. Thirdly, however, we have to think about the economics of it, and I've been through pilot shortages in the Air Force. I understand the challenges we have in economics. At some point in time, we do have to attract and retain teachers, partly because we have to compensate them appropriately. I think we in our county and in our state do not have a great record for how we pay our teachers, and consequently over time the economics of it will just create a higher attrition than we can stand. So we have to take care of them and pay them.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Ms. Kelly?
That's a great question, and one that I'm quite familiar with intimately as a school principal in 3 different schools. I face that fairly frequently. I think there are 5 things we should do. I think we should build a stronger collaborative pipeline between the district and our colleges and universities. I think that we should build stronger supports for new teachers. They should never feel like they're in the classroom alone, that they have someone to go to for help and assistance. I think we should utilize alternative certification programs that takes individuals who have other degrees and assist them with the methods and strategies needed to gain a successful certificate in teaching. I believe fourthly, we should be more proactive in forecasting how many and what kind of openings we foresee coming up in our district. And lastly, support those we have, perhaps by increasing the drop years so that our experienced teachers can stay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelly. And our last question, we begin with you. Insufficient sleep in adolescence has been shown to be associated with a wide variety of adverse outcomes, from poor mental and physical health to behavior problems and lower academic grades. Would you support recommendations to the school district regarding adjustment of school start times, i.e. delaying high school or adjusting depending on age?
That's an excellent question, and one that I have intimate familiarity with as well, as I've been a principal at both an early start and a late start, and a school that started right in the middle of those two time zones. So I'm very familiar with the arguments for and against early start times, as well as the research and the firsthand experience in those. In addition, I've spoken directly with Dr. Keefe, who's done a lot of local research on that topic, and I've spoken with our transportation director, who tells me that he has some scenarios in which he can, for secondary students, work out at little or no cost those driving routes without it incurring a lot of cost. Of course, for me, this is not a matter of cost. This is a matter of doing what's the best for our students, and so therefore I would support it, however, with no surprises to our parents.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kelly. Mr. McAllister?
I too have talked to Dr. Keefe. I've researched it myself, and I do see that there is evidence that there are benefits for our students, particularly the high school students, for later start times. However, it's a very complicated issue because there are a number of stakeholders who are directly affected by a change in school start times. And we could talk about athletics, we could talk about jobs, we could talk about parents, teachers. There are a number of people who are affected one way or the other. And therefore, what I propose is a more collaborative approach to attack this problem. It's not enough for just one of us or two of us to have an opinion, but rather if, as a school board, we can charter a committee, which we have the authority to do, to study this problem and allow all the stakeholders who are affected by the outcome to have a chance to express themselves. We can solve this problem and create a solution which pleases as many people as possible.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAllister and Ms. Kelly. That concludes the question and answer portion of this debate at the moment, or this forum. Ms. Kelly, we begin the last question with you. So, Mr. McAllister, we will begin your closing statement. Sir, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Well, we have an excellent school system in Okaloosa County, but we have some challenges that we've discussed tonight that could, over time, affect our excellence and our safety. Growth, infrastructure challenges, buses, mental health. We have an opportunity, however, as a school board to attack those problems, and we have another task, which is to restore the trust and the confidence of our citizens in the leadership of their school system. I bring two particularly unique assets. One, I come from outside the district, so I have a different perspective on how to solve problems, gained through strategic level work as in industry and the military, and secondly, impeccable integrity over that period of time. Those attributes are essential if we're to regain the confidence, faith, and trust of our citizens in the leadership of their school system, and for us to solve the very distinct and challenging issues that we have that we know we need to solve over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Ms. Kelly, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the viewers. I am Dr. Diane Kelly, your experienced and positive candidate for school board in District 5. I bring more than 36 years of experience inside Okaloosa County schools as a classroom teacher, a principal in 3 schools, and a district level director of 3 departments. I've also taught at the college and university levels and now have authored 30 courses. When I retired, I formed my own consulting company, and that has given me the opportunity to work in surrounding school districts as well as with student education. I bring to the table both an insider view of our school system as well as an outsider perspective now. I'm the candidate in this race who has run a campaign that both my own daughter and the thousands of students who've entered my school doors can be proud of. I've been positive, upbeat, and focused on my own qualifications. I have the highest evaluations. I love to be your voice. I look forward to your vote. Please go vote for me, Dr. Diane Kelly, on or before August 28th. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, candidates. We are taking a short break. We leave you with a look at the races still to come on Rally 2018. There's much more straight ahead. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching this year's rally event on WSRE TV. I am Elizabeth King. Ray Hudkins and I serve as co-presidents of the League of Women Voters of the Pensacola Bay Area. For nearly 30 years, the leagues here and in Okaloosa County have provided questions for events like tonight's forum as a service to our local communities. Our democracy is based on active participation by informed citizens, and voting is an important way to participate. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, which means we don't support or oppose parties or candidates. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and encourage informed and active participation in government. This rally is one of the ways for us to make accurate and nonpartisan information available to voters. You can also contact us for explanations of amendments and other ballot issues. We invite women and men to attend our public events or to join us as members of the League. For more information, visit lwvpba.org or lwvokaloosa.org. And please remember to be an informed voter this year.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Escambia County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Escambia County Supervisor of Elections office. You can write, phone, fax, email, log on to their website, or ask in person at the supervisor's office on Palafox Place in downtown Pensacola. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Saturday, August 18th through Saturday, August 25th at the 8 locations listed on the screen. Early voting times are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Supervisor of Elections office and from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. at all other locations. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place at your polling location from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered. To verify your precinct, log on to escambiavotes.com. Be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you.
Welcome back to Rally 2018 on WSRE TV, PBS for the Gulf Coast. We just finished with questions for the candidates vying for Okaloosa County School Boards District 1, 3, and 5. And we turn now to Santa Rosa County and the races for School Boards 1, 3, and 5. That's School Board Districts 1, 3, and 5. And we'll begin with the race for Santa Rosa School Board District 1. There are 2 candidates in this race. Our first candidate this evening is Mr. Roderick Gracie.
Good evening.
And seated next to him is Miss Linda Sanborn.
Good evening.
Welcome to you both. We have a number of questions for you, and Mr. Gracie, we'll start with you with question 1. With the increased population of school-age children, especially in Pace and Navarre, how do you plan to ensure that class size regulations are met?
Well, it's very important that our district put together a very strategic growth plan. We have to keep track almost daily, and we are doing that now with our, with our projections. We're going to have to watch our FTE counts. Our school populations are exploding. And we need to plan for future growth. We need to plan for the acquisition of property to place new schools on, especially in the Pace area. We're already working on that in the South End with between $30 and $40 million school being built down there. But we're going to have to keep an eye on growth, especially in our Pace area, and we need to let the parents know where those schools will be located, because with that comes new zoning.
Thank you. All right, that same question to you now, Ms. Sanborn. With the increased population of school-age children in Pace and Navarre especially, how do you plan to ensure class size requirements or guidelines are met?
Well, there's 2 things we need to consider. Not only schools, and as Mr. Gracie said, we need to keep an eye on that. And I know there is a new school planned in the south end of the county. The school board has also been very proactive in seeking other pieces of land to purchase for the building of schools. But the other thing we have to consider is that those classrooms are going to need teachers. And in order to keep in in line with the Class Size Amendment Act, not only classrooms and schools, but we're going to have to be very proactive in hiring new teachers and recruiting new teachers and keeping those that we have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sanborn. And our next question will go to you first. Following the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the state has set rules to increase security in schools. What additional school safety measures should be implemented, in your opinion?
Well, in Santa Rosa County, we have already taken steps. First, the schools were limited to just one access rather than multiple accesses in each school. The Santa Rosa County School Board has become proactive in hiring new school resource officers. There are other things that I think we can do. I think that we need to start using our video cameras proactively prior to an event, as in have a teacher aide or a parent volunteer monitoring those video cameras on a full-time basis to see if there's anyone lurking around the school. Those are some of the things that we can do.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sanborn. And to you, Mr. Gracie, what additional school safety measures do you think should be implemented?
Well, back when I was on the domestic task force for the security and task force, there was 5 districts involved in that. When I was director of student services, we secured some grants to start putting security cameras in our school. But now we are very proactive. I'm over safety and security where I work now at T.R. Jackson Pre-K Center for the Head Start program. And we are every day putting in initiatives to harden our campuses. We're doing that throughout the district with the addition of school resource officers. We need their presence on our campuses, but with that, we need our parents, we need mental health counselors to work with our children to identify those children that may be a threat to others or themselves. That's very important.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gracie. And you'll get this next question first. What qualifications and/or training should be required for school resource officers?
Well, my opinion right now is that we need, in our schools, what we're placing now are off-duty officers who are fully trained. For them, and I don't agree with putting our teachers with, arming them. That would not be a good thing. They need to do their job and teach. They have enough on them already. But the qualifications, it would be extensive because it would take extensive training. Those individuals would have to be put through tests to see how they act under stress. You never know how they're going to react when an incident goes down on the campus. They may get under this desk. You never know.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gracie. And now that question to you, Ms. Sanborn. What qualifications and/or training do you think should be required for school resource officers?
The school resource officers are different than your usual person out driving the patrol car. He obviously has to be trained in all those same things, but I think he needs training with dealing with students. We do not want to have our school resource officers having such a heavy hand in the school that it takes away the quality experience that our students have at school. And we certainly don't want there to be a feeling of going through the TSA line as we do at the airports. So that individual needs training on dealing with students and teachers. He needs training on talking to students also.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Sanborn, we'll go back to you for this next question. If elected, what will be your top priorities during your term?
My number one priority will be to take better care of our teachers. There is a book, which honestly I have not read, but the title I really like, and that is, If You Don't Feed the Teachers, They Will Eat the Students. Now clearly none of our teachers are going to eat students, but we must take care of the teachers so that they can do the best job for our students. Right now, approximately 50% of our teachers in Santa Rosa County have a second job. That's time away from rest, that's time away from planning, that's time away from their own families. And there will come a point when those teachers say, I've had it. We have to take care of them.
All right, thank you. To you, Mr. Gracie. If elected, what will be your top priorities during your term?
My top priority would be to return our district to a working and trusting relationship between the school board and our employees and the public, to where we work together. And to do that, to get our employees back on board, it's like Ms. Sanborn said, we've got to offer a better compensation and benefit package to our employees. We've got to show them how much we appreciate them. We have the best teachers and non-instructional personnel in the state. You know, our scores show that over the years, and we've got to take care of our employees. We also got to keep our children first.
All right, thank you. And we're up to our final question for you candidates this evening in School Board, Santa Rosa School Board District 1. Mr. Gracie, it'll go to you first. The millage rate to support public schools has not been increased in many years. Please comment on whether the school board should request an increase in this rate to meet the rising cost of education.
Well, presently we do have our half-cent sales tax. We've asked our public to participate in that, of course, and they voted to go with that. Our millage rate is something that I think right now we can survive where we're at. We do have our fund balance is very, very healthy, and we're going to be able to hopefully this next year give our employees and our staff what they deserve and a better benefit and salary package. We also want to be looking at our 7-period day, but revisiting that. But presently I would say hold where we're at.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Sanborn, your opportunity to answer this question. Comment on whether the school board should request an increase in the millage rate to help meet the cost of education.
Absolutely not. At this point, there is no reason to do so. Between the half-cent sales tax and the funding that we get, we have plenty to do what we need to do. We just need to take a very sharp pencil to the budget. We need to look for waste. We need, if necessary, to dip into the very large fund balance that we have. But there is no reason to raise taxes. We can absolutely do what we need to do with what we currently have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sanborn, and thanks to our candidates. It is now time for closing statements, and each of you will have 45 seconds. Moving in order, Ms. Sanborn, we will begin with you for your closing. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name's Linda Sanborn, running for the Santa Rosa County School Board representing District 1. I am a retired teacher. I retired a year ago after 35 years of teaching. I also spent 10 years working full-time as the owner and vice president of Adventures Unlimited. So I not only have 35 years classroom experience, I also have experience as a business person, and I'm still an owner and vice president of that business. I have a master's degree in education. So I feel as though I have the qualifications necessary to help the board get back to number 1 in the state. Our rankings have slipped to number 12, and that's not where we need to be. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sanborn. And now to you, Mr. Gracie, 45 seconds for your closing remarks.
Good evening, I'm Rod Gracie. I'm a school board candidate for District 1. I have over 41 years, beginning my 42nd year now in education. My wife had 35 years. My daughters and I, 3 daughters, have 118 years. We have devoted our entire lives to the children and this community in Santa Rosa County. We love our county, and we know we want to keep it number 1. I want you to know that I will be a school board member that will be accessible 24/7 to you anytime, no matter if you're out of my district or not, and I will be there to support you and to be with our children and to keep our over 28,000 gifted students safe.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our candidates, and we are now going to take a short break here on Rally 2018. When we come back, we'll meet the candidates for Santa Rosa County School Board, District 3. Stay with us.
There is nothing more important to our democratic process than having an informed electorate voting on Election Day. Good evening. I am Ed Meadows, President of Pensacola State College, thanking you for tuning into this rally, a joint presentation of the League of Women Voters, WSRE TV, and Pensacola State College. Rally allows you the opportunity to watch and listen as this election year's slate of candidates answer the tough questions concerning the needs of our community. WSRE, a service of Pensacola State College, is proud to bring this program to you as a public service. And as always, we invite your comments and suggestions about how we can further fulfill our community obligations. Let's all remember the importance of participating in the governance process by voting in the upcoming election.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Santa Rosa County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Santa Rosa County Supervisor of Elections office by phone, mail, fax, or email. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Monday, August 13th through Saturday, August 25th in Milton, Pace, and at 2 locations in the Greater Gulf Breeze area. Early voting hours each day are 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered, and be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. Welcome back to Rally 2018. Primary Election Day is August 28th. It's right around the corner, and this is your opportunity to meet the local candidates. We turn now to the race for Santa Rosa County School Board District 3. We will meet the candidates now in alphabetical order. Our first candidate is Miss Carol Boston. Welcome. And seated next to her is Mr. Kenny Long. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this evening. And we begin again in alphabetical order. This first question goes to Miss Boston. The millage rate to support public schools hasn't been increased in many years. Please comment on whether the school board should request an increase in this rate to meet the rising costs of education.
Thank you for that question. That is true. Actually, our millage rate has decreased, but thanks to the increase in building and property values, the school district is actually receiving more funds, although the burden to individual homeowners has reduced. So I don't believe that we need to be lobbying to increase taxes. I do attend the legislative days in Tallahassee. I serve on the legislative committee for the Florida School Boards Association and meet with our legislators to discuss what they can do to help us fund the best educational opportunities for our students that we can.
All right, thank you, Miss Boston. Mr. Long, this question now goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No. Okay, so absolutely not. I don't believe that we need to look at increasing the millage, raising taxes in any way. Our voters have been very generous to offer a half-cent sales tax to approve that, which has helped us out tremendously in the district. I believe that we can work with the monies that we already have in place. As a matter of fact, we've appreciated a surplus in recent years. We have a very healthy fund balance at $24 million. And so I think we do need to scrutinize our budget, look very closely at areas that we can trim from that budget so we can do the very best for our students, for our staff and salaries. But I believe that we can definitely do that without increasing the millage. Our student population is up, our property values are up, so our district is receiving increased funding.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. And we begin our next question with you. How would you evaluate the quality and cost effectiveness of privatization of bus and food services, as well as transportation, obviously for buses, for public schools?
Okay, so I think we have to look specifically at efficiency and see, are we getting the most bang for our buck that we spend in those areas. We need to evaluate it comprehensively. We need to be looking at how are we improving those services for families? What is the quality of what we're offering to students? I think we do that through survey. We do that through speaking to our public. We do that through being involved at the school level with our administrators and our teachers to see what services, how do you compare those services to what we've had in the past before we begin to outsource those things? And we need to do a close look and a strong reflection on that each year and evaluate closely if we're getting what we expect and what we would like to see, and if we can improve and save in any way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Boston, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. How would you evaluate the quality and cost effectiveness of privatization of bus transportation and food services for public schools?
Thank you. That is a good question. And we evaluate all of these contracts on a regular basis. In fact, in the negotiations for our transportation contract in this past year, negotiations fell such that we have moved to a new transportation company, STA, and they have come on with a bus tracker system. And of course, in the beginning of the school year, we had a few glitches. Transportation and logistics tend to be a challenge. So we evaluate those on a constant basis. Our purchasing department evaluates the contracts, the RFPs, with food service, with transportation, with our custodial services. We evaluate those. We get quarterly reports from those organizations.
All right, and Ms. Boston, we begin this next question with you. Following the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the state has set rules to increase security in schools. What additional school safety measures should be implemented?
Thank you. Another good question. Safety is one of my top objectives. Our students have to be safe so that they can learn. And we as a district have made a commitment to that. We started by hardening our schools. Yet again, we're always looking for new opportunities to improve safety. This board has approved $1.5 million to enhance and implement surveillance cameras and videos. We have also checked points of entries. We have safety checks. We have hired a director of safety, and we have also hired a director of mental health. And we will be having an armed sheriff's deputy in every school this year.
All right, thank you, Ms. Boston. Mr. Long, this question now goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Sure.
Following the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the state has set rules to increase security in schools. What additional school safety measures should be implemented?
So first, I'd say we are on the right track with the governor's mandates. He mandated that each school have a school resource officer beginning this school year, that we have access for all of our students to licensed mental health counselors, to the guidance services that they need, increased funding for hardening of schools, active shooter trainings, really a comprehensive list of about 8 to 10 things. What I think we need to do in additional, because we're on the right track, but in addition to those things, we need to look at our portable buildings that are sometimes remote from the school, that are kind of locked off and sectioned from the school. I have some concerns about the vulnerability of those portable buildings and how easy access could be, especially if they're not in a fenced area. We need to continue to increase security cameras, and I think that's a great start.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Long. And we begin our next question with you. With the increased population of school-age children, especially in Pace and Navarre, how do you plan to ensure that class size guidelines are met?
Okay, I believe this begins with ensuring that we can put teachers in the classroom. Mid-school year last year, we had 39 open positions, instructional positions, and this year, currently, I checked the numbers yesterday, and we had 16 open instructional positions, compared with our neighboring county that only had 6. And so it's concerning if we have open positions in our school district, classes we already can't fill. We need to recruit and retain the best teachers by taking care of them in salary and benefits. So that's a start to it. We also have to communicate with our zoning boards. We have to meet more regularly with our county commissioners, and we have to do some planning. We are looking at some land purchases. We do have a new school that's going to be opening soon, but we need to do more of that, more communication.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Boston, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, with the increased population of school-age children, especially in Pace and Navarre, how do you plan to ensure that class size requirement guidelines are met?
Thank you for that question. We work diligently on keeping control of class size as best as we can. We do have students enrolling every day, so our numbers continue to increase. We have, even before I was on the board was purchasing land and looking towards future growth and development. I served on the county zoning board for 2.5 years, so I was very well aware of the need to communicate with commissioners. And since I have been on the board in my first term, we have met twice with county commission to discuss their move toward development and how to incorporate working with the school district to ensure that we have proper capacity for our students. I also serve on our recruitment and retention committee for teachers.
All right, Thank you, Ms. Boston. And let's see here. We begin our next question. Our last question, in fact, for this round goes to you. We begin with you. In the last 10 years, instructional time has been reduced from 7 hours to 6 hours daily. What is your plan to increase instructional time?
I ran on wanting to implement the returning to the 7-period day. As I was teaching in the school system and my own children were going through, I saw the difference in having the 7-period day and not having it. This school board did put money aside to go back to the 7-period day. Unfortunately, as we grow, that is now not enough funding. So we need to evaluate the budget and work on a way that we can get that instructional time back to our children. Of course, like I said, safety is paramount so that the students can learn, feel safe enough to learn, but bringing instructional time and bringing the best educational opportunities that we can to help our students be successful is the goal.
All right, thank you, Ms. Boston. Mr. Long, this question goes to you now. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a paramount thing. Our students are lacking some of the instruction that neighboring counties. It adds up to 12 to 14 days. If you really put that together, 30 minutes of instructional time a day, and you look at those 180 days of school that they're there. So it's very concerning, and I think we can address that in a number of ways. Number one, if we maintain our tiered bus schedule, I believe we can save a lot of money. So the cost estimate was about $8 million. We have $3 million already set aside in a fund to go towards that 7-period day. So if we incentivize if we increase the tiered schedule and we incentivize our teachers teaching an extra period versus having to hire so many new teachers, I think that cuts down on the added personnel, and I believe we can work our way back towards that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. And that concludes the questions for the candidates for Santa Rosa County School Board District 3. Now we'll hear their closing statements. Mr. Boston, we begin our last question with you. Or Ms. Boston, rather. Mr. Long, it is your turn to begin. You have 45 seconds.
Okay, I think I've been in education for all of my adult life, and I have served in multiple different roles around our community. I have 5 children of my own in the school district, so I'm very vested in the school district here. But we have some concerns right now, and one of those concerns is restoring faith and lost trust in our school board. We are going to have to be more transparent. We are going to have to institute things like workshops where we can discuss issues and we can ask questions, and those things can happen in the public eye. There was a land deal that happened recently, the rejection of the special magistrate's recommendation. Those were very concerning to our community, and I think we owe it to our constituents to be involved. We need to have more access and just involvement of the community. So I ask for your vote on August 28th.
All right, thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Boston, closing statements now, 45 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to read this to get the facts correct. After honorably serving on the school board for the last 4 years, I can relay that our district's mission is to prepare students for success by providing a superior, relevant education. I need your help to continue accomplishing our mission and to protect your tax dollars for positive student outcomes. Our district is designated a top performing district in the state of Florida with an A grade. In the 2018-19 school year, we will offer our students 16 middle school academies, 47 secondary academies, and 20 post-secondary career programs. Each school will also be protected by an armed sheriff's deputy. Those of you that have known me, worked with me, volunteered with me, and worshiped with me know my character, my integrity, and my dedication to our students, and my faithfulness to my oath of office. Please vote for me on August 28th, Carol Boston, School Board District 3.
Thank you both candidates for joining us this evening on Rally 2018. And that is it for the District 3 school board race in Santa Rosa County. But when we come back, we'll meet the candidates for Santa Rosa County School Board District 5. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching this year's rally event on WSRE TV. I'm Mary Blackwell, President of the League of Women Voters of Okaloosa and Walton Counties. For decades, the Okaloosa, Walton, and Pensacola Bay Area Leagues have provided questions for events like tonight's forum as a service to our local communities. The success of our democracy depends on active participation by informed citizens, which begins with voting. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, which means we don't support or oppose parties or candidates. This rally is one way for us to make accurate and nonpartisan information available to voters. You can also contact us for explanations of amendments, merit retention of judges, and other ballot issues. We invite women and men to attend our public events or join us as members of League. Please see our website for more information or to contact us. And please remember to be an informed voter this year.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Okaloosa County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Okaloosa County Supervisor of Elections office. You can write, phone, fax, email, log on to their website, or visit the Supervisor's office locations in Crestview and Fort Walton Beach. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections offices by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Saturday, August 18th through Saturday, August 25th at the 5 locations listed on screen. Hours for early voting are 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. each day. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place at your polling location from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered. Be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you.
Welcome back to Rally 2018. We begin with our final race in Santa Rosa County this evening. School Board District 5. There are 2 candidates in this race. Let's meet them. The first candidate in alphabetical order is Mr. Scott Peden. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Mr. Peden. And next to him is Miss Way Ubershear. Welcome, Miss Way, Miss Ubershear. All right, and we now will begin our questions in alphabetical order. Again, Mr. Peden, we will give the first question to you. With the increased population of school-aged children, especially in Navarre and Pace, how do you plan to ensure that class size regulations are met?
It's a very good question, and we're already in that process right now. As many of you have already heard, we have been authorized to build a new K-12 school by the state of Florida, and we're working on the final plans of that now. That will bring some relief to the Navarre area. A few years ago, the board, we bought a 40-acre piece of land in the Pea Ridge area to be used for a future school, and we are still looking every day at other pieces of land throughout the county, because we know at some point we're going to have a high school in the south end as well. And we're in negotiations with the city of Gulf Breeze for a piece of land, not saying that that might be a high school, but we know we're going to need land somewhere for some kind of schools. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now, Ms. Ubershear, that question to you. How do you plan to ensure that class size regulations are met?
Although I applaud the construction of the new K-8 school in Navarre, we have reached capacity in almost all the schools. There's only 5 out of the 30 schools in Santa Rosa County which still has room for a transfer with open enrollment. The half-cent tax that the voters in Santa Rosa County had approved has earmarked money, raising $7 million a year towards capital outlay. We need to start the long process of new schools construction, especially a high school in the south end, as well as another school in the Pace area. We've got to work with our county commissioners to accommodate the growth that they're approving.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ubershear. And this next question will go to you first. Following the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, the state has set rules to increase security in schools. What additional security measures would you implement?
Okay, well, thank you. The state had mandated that there would be a school resource officer on every campus, so that is going to be a given. That's something that we're going to have to do. Also, to provide mental health counselors on each campus that's available to the students. There should be more security cameras that are linked remotely to local law enforcement so that they can see what is going on in our schools in real time. Santa Rosa Sheriff's Department has implemented an app, an anonymous Crime Stoppers for students, so that they can alert school resource officers for potential problems. All of these things can lead to better school safety.
All right, thank you. And now to you, Mr. Peden, what additional school safety measures do you think should be implemented?
Well, primarily, that's my big focus is school safety. Right now we have got resource officers in every school, which is a good start. Now we're working on the capital side of it. Hardening the schools is going to be a big step. We have hired a director of school safety, and he's beginning the process to evaluate all our schools and seeing what we need there and what capital money we need there as well. We have spent a lot of money upgrading video systems in our schools, and those systems are connected to law enforcement and as well as radios. We have radios in our schools that we're adding as well where they can talk directly to the local law enforcement. We will continue to do those things in the future.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peden. And this next question will go to you first. The millage rate to support public schools has not been increased in many years. Please comment on whether the school board should request an increase in this rate to meet the rising cost of education.
No, I don't believe that that we should increase the millage rate. I mean, our millage rate has dropped pretty much year after year after year, and that's strictly due to the growth in our county and the property values going up. So we're getting more money from property taxes, and the state is saying, well, your millage rate, your required rate, it needs to be lower. I'm not for increasing people's millage rate, their taxes on their homes. You know, funding from the state is the priority we need to start working on with our legislators to get them to give us more funding. All of the funding increase we got this year was strictly for school safety. We're receiving basically about 50 cents per student increase for the students we have, and that's not enough to do anything extra.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peden. And Ms. Ubershire, comment on whether you think the millage rate should be increased.
No, I don't believe the millage rate should be increased. In fact, the majority of the millage rate is determined by the state as the required local effort to be raised towards capital outlay. Again, the voters had graciously given Santa Rosa County School District the half-cent tax towards capital projects. So I think that we should be using those funds as well as the funds that we were receiving because property values have increased in Santa Rosa County in order to continue with the capital projects.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Ubershire, you will get this next question first. In the last 10 years, instructional time has been reduced from 7 hours to 6 hours daily. What is your plan to increase instructional time?
The restoration of the instruction time is paramount to me. It is one of the main driving forces for why I decided to run for school board. Our middle and high school students are graduating with less credits than neighboring counties. Our teachers do not have a planning period. $3 million has been committed to a fund by the school board, but yet this instructional time has not been implemented. I believe it can be restored for less cost than what the school board has proposed. There would be no transportation increases if we stay on a three-tiered system, and as well, there would be no staffing changes on the elementary level. For these reasons, I believe that a seventh period could be re-implemented.
All right, thank you. And that question now to you, Mr. Peden. What is your plan to increase instructional time?
Well, I'm all for increasing instructional time. It was a tough decision that we made years ago due to the recession to have to go back to a 6-period day. But it was something that had to be done to keep the district in good financial condition. As we move forward, yes, we had $3 million that we received as basically a windfall. From property tax windfall and a settlement or two, and we put that in a fund, reserve fund, to put toward returning to a 7-period day. But that money cannot be used for salaries. It's $3 million. Once it's spent, it's gone. It's basically getting startup costs and everything else we need to do. So we had a committee that met for 2 months, made of teachers, administrators, union representatives, and they voted this past year. We couldn't do it this year. 100%. It was not financially sustainable.
All right, thank you. Rebuttal, Ms. Ubershire.
Yes, actually, that $3 million was part of a $5.5 million funding that went to the Santa Rosa County School Board because of increased student population. We are seeing an annual increase in our student population, so actually those funds are recurring.
All right, thank you. We're up to our final question for the candidates, and we will begin with you, Mr. Peden. If elected, what will be your top priorities for your term?
I have 3 top priorities. I've already expressed one. One is safety, school safety. That has to be our top priority right now. And we're well on our way, but we have a lot of work to do, and it's very important that we make sure our schools are secure. I also want to, continue the work we're doing to recruit and retain quality educators. We do a very good job at it, considering our pay is lower than our adjacent counties, but our funding is lower than our adjacent counties. But we have to continue to offer them better, comparable benefits, a good working place, advancement opportunities as well. And my third priority is preparing for the future, dealing with growth, just like we have done for the past 5-6 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peden. And to you now, Ms. Ubershire, what will be your top priorities?
Well, since safety is now state mandated, that is not going to be a priority that I have control over. So the 3 priorities that I would like to see implemented are restoring the instructional time, which I spoke about at the last question, retaining and recruiting great teachers. I understand that funding is an issue in all counties. However, this school year, Santa Rosa County will have a higher per student funding than Escambia County. Now, if Escambia County can have 7 periods and pay their teachers better, then there's no reason why Santa Rosa County cannot do that as well. And the third thing is to address growth. Again, working with the county commission and building new schools.
All right, thank you, and thank you to our candidates. We are now finished with the questions and turn now to closing statements, and we will begin with Ms. Ubershire, since we began our last question with Mr. Peden. Ms. Ubershire, 45 seconds for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I have dedicated the past 20 years to my community, serving as a teacher, as a board member for a PTA or various charitable organizations. I will work to accomplish what I believe are the 3 most pressing issues, which again, restoring instructional time to our students, retaining and recruiting great teachers so that we don't have the exodus of some of our finest instructors. Also, we need to start the long process of building new schools. And I believe that we can accomplish this because the school district will have more state and local funding because of increased property values and a higher full-time enrollment funding, and a reserve fund that is more than 3 times what is mandated by the state.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ubershire. And to you now, Mr. Peden, 45 seconds for your closing.
It has been my honor and privilege to serve the citizens and children of Santa Rosa County for the past 8 years. It's been some good times and it's been some bad times, but we've gone through a recession and we've come back and we've got our district in a financially stable situation. Our motto in this county is a tradition of excellence, and that's what we work for every day. As a board member, as teachers, as administrators, the superintendent. I've traveled all over the state of Florida, and I think I've been in every county, and I can honestly say that there's no better place to live, work, raise, and educate your children than Santa Rosa County, and it is my mission to only make that better. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peden, and thanks to our candidates. We are now taking a quick break. When we come back, we'll turn our focus to Escambia County and the races for school board districts 1, 2, and 3. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching this year's rally event on WSRE TV. I am Elizabeth King. Ray Hudkins and I serve as co-presidents of the League of Women Voters of the Pensacola Bay Area. For nearly 30 years, the leagues here and in Okaloosa County have provided questions for events like tonight's forum as a service to our local communities. Our democracy is based on active participation by informed citizens, and voting is an important way to participate. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, which means we don't support or oppose parties or candidates. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and encourage informed and active participation in government. This rally is one of the ways for us to make accurate and nonpartisan information available to voters. You can also contact us for explanations of amendments and other ballot issues. We invite women and men to attend our public events or to join us as members of the League. For more information, visit lwv.org. pba.org or lwvokaloosa.org. And please remember to be an informed voter this year.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Escambia County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Escambia County Supervisor of Elections office. You can write, phone, fax, email, log on to their website, or ask in person at the supervisor's office on Palafox Place in downtown Pensacola. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Saturday, August 18th through Saturday, August 25th at the 8 locations listed on the screen. Early voting times are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Supervisor of Elections office and from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. at all other locations. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place at your polling location from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered. To verify your precinct, log on to escambiavotes.com. Be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. And welcome back. You are watching Rally 2018 here on WSRE TV, where candidates in the upcoming primary election have the opportunity to answer questions about some of the issues. And the questions for tonight's races were prepared by the League of Women Voters, Pensacola Bay Area, as well as Okaloosa and Walton counties. And up next, we move to the race for Escambia County School Board District 1. It is time now to meet the candidates, and there are 2 in this race. In alphabetical order, the first candidate is Mr. Kevin Adams. Welcome. And seated next to him is Miss Marjorie R. White. Thank you both for joining us this evening. It is time now to get to our questions, and beginning in alphabetical order, our first question is for Mr. Adams. What do you consider the most important issue facing the school board?
Well, for right now, the most important thing affecting the school board is the massive growth that we got from Navy Federal coming in. So we have that where we've just built 2 brand new schools to handle that growth. We're expecting more growth. Navy Federal still got 2 more buildings that are on the way. We also have the budget that we have to worry about because the state was limited in their funds where they only gave us 47 cents per operating budget. And we're blessed that we had that 1/2 cent sales tax that's paying for these new schools. So that's going to be something critical for us in the next 5 years, is handling the growth of the Escambia County as a whole with the economic impact that we got from Navy Federal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. White, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What do you consider the most important issue facing the school board?
I believe that the most important issue facing the school board is to make sure that every student in the Escambia County School District receives a quality, well-rounded education. It's nice that the charter schools and the added academic programs that's been instilled into the school system. However, there's a lot of students still not receiving the kind of education they need to receive. I believe a lot of work needs to be done in that area.
All right. Yes, a rebuttal, Mr. Adams.
Second. We have continuously been rising our student graduation rates. We're up to 80% now. So the county's been trending the right way for a long time. We'll keep making improvements to the graduation rates, but right now we're improving every year. So yes, we hope to be 100% one day, but we're working as hard as we can to keep improving those rates like we have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. And Ms. White, this next question, we begin with you. Since some of the funding for public school is directed to financially support charter schools, how can the county adequately fund traditional Escambia County schools?
I believe that the Escambia County School Board has a responsibility to make sure that every student, and I repeat that, every student in the school district gets a full, well-rounded, quality education. Yes, maybe some improvements have been made some places, but I understand, just discussing or talking with parents in the district, District 1, as well as other parts of the school district, that there's schools have been closed. Too many schools have been closed in certain areas where there's no elementary school. So again, I repeat the same thing.
Thank you, Ms. White. Mr. Adams, that same question goes to you, sir. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Repeat it one more time. Yeah.
Since some of the funding for public schools is directed to financially support charter schools, how can the county adequately fund traditional schools in Escambia County?
Okay. Well, there is a competition for dollars down in Tallahassee when it comes to charter schools and public schools. And that's something that we'll have to continue to work with Tallahassee to make sure when it comes to the public schools that we're adequately funding our public schools. So, and that's where we have to go. And I just mentioned earlier, you know, they only gave us 47 cents increase in our general operating budget. Now, Tallahassee will say they gave an increase because they included security and money and all that. But we're going to have competition when it comes to that for dollars to keep our schools going. But also, you know, we'll keep doing what we got to do to improve our schools and keep working at it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. And we begin this next question with you. Realizing that there's a national shortage of teachers, what is the role of the school board in attracting highly qualified teachers considering the limited funds for teacher pay?
Well, we got a big problem there because we have Tallahassee where they have the certification of teachers. And what they did, they increased the standards on that test. We got a 30% more higher failure rate with teachers. So you can have the best drama teacher there ever was. And if she don't know how to do calculus, then we got to let her go if she can't get her certification. So some of this critical shortage has actually been created by Tallahassee. They create the standards, they create the standards the teachers have to go to, and then what we have to do, we work with those teachers. Our staff will have tutoring sessions, try to get them through, but the impact of those standards it's not specific to the subject they're teaching in. So that's what's impacting our shortage of both.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. White, the question goes to you now.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Realizing that there is a national shortage of teachers, what is the role of the school board in attracting highly qualified teachers, especially considering the limited funds for teacher pay?
That's the problem. When it comes to schools, public schools in particular, it never seems to be enough funds. But yet there's funds to do other things from a government level. My understanding of school funding should come from the federal government, state government, as well as local. Not just all state and not just all local. I believe that it's up to the responsibility of a school board to lobby, do whatever is necessary, talk to whoever is necessary to convince them that it's more important to put money into our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. And Mr. Adams, you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, and I think you heard it from your Santa Rosa candidates. We actually increased our teacher pay. We did 5% cuts across the department. We increased their pay, and we did it even for our support ed. That part's working pretty good. Our problem, really, the biggest problem we got is with that certification problem with the state, trying to get our teachers certified. If they don't get certified, and it's all across the state of Florida on that problem. So,
Ms. White, you have a rebuttal?
Well, it has come to my attention that yes, there was a slight increase in teacher pay, but then there was a cut in benefits. Now, I can't go into all the details. I think Mr. Adams here would have more idea as to what was cut, how much was cut, but that's what was told to me in discussing the issue with teachers as well as parents in the school district.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. And this next question, we begin with you. The millage rate to support public schools has not been increased in many years. Please comment on whether the school board should request an increase in this rate to meet the rising costs of education.
I think that if it's necessary to increase the mileage rates, yes, I think it should be increased. I also think that maybe it's time that some of our elected officials took a pay cut. You know, they get their raises. Nobody says anything about that. But when it comes to public education, it's cut, cut, cut. And they think that the charter schools is going to solve all the problems. It's not. It's creating more problems.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Mr. Adams, same question to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, ma'am, that's fine. No, I do not support raising the millage. We have not. We actually even use a clawback rate. We did get a bump in funding just by the growth in Escambia County. So if we can just work with Tallahassee on the other part of the funding, I think we'll be just fine. We got an excellent bond rating because of our finances. Our finance department's been awarded national awards on how well they're keeping our finances. So we're doing as good as we can for a school district. It's got 53 schools, 40,000 students, and 7,000 employees on the finances. Now, if we keep getting those limited increases from the state, now we may be getting in some issues there, but I will be that fiscal conservative on the board.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. And we begin our next question with you. If elected as one of the 5 school board members, what will be your top priority during your term?
Well, one of my top priorities is the growth. As you know, we opened up new schools. We got subdivisions after subdivisions coming in. For District 1, we got growth even down in the southern part of the district to the northern part of the district. It's created a lot of issues. So that's going to be one of my priorities. And since I've been in facilities and been in financial management for the government, been in facilities for Naval Air facilities, and been over contracts, that's the part that we're going to have to watch out to make sure that we have the right put the right schools in the right places to fix our schools that are at capacity, to lessen that and give them more room.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. White, question goes to you now. Would you like for me to repeat it? If elected as one of the 5 school board members, what will be your top priority?
My top priority, well, first of all, is to study all of the problems that currently exist in the school district, to work with organizations, other elected officials at the city council, county council, state level, and federal level, if necessary, to express my concern and the concern of the parents to make sure that their children get a proper education.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. White. It is time now, candidates, for closing statements, and you will each get 45 seconds. Ms. White, we start with you. 45 seconds, please.
I came here to Pensacola. I moved here in 2011, and the whole time I've been here, I've always been an active person, working with different organizations in whatever community I live in, for the better of the community. And I came and I heard some horrible stories about what goes on in the school system here. Minority and poor children are just kind of overlooked or shoved aside, or given pills, you know, to if they have a handicapping condition, ADA or something like that. I would want to work with the organizations and state and federal level elected officials to work out something, put some plans in place to eliminate these problems.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. White. Mr. Adams, 45 seconds, please.
Yes, and thank y'all for hosting this tonight, the League of Women Voters and WSRE. I will tell you, I've got endorsement as a superintendent. I even have the endorsement of my opponent from 2016, Willie Kirkland. I will be that passion for education and helping the students. I volunteered for hundreds of events this last year. I mean, I attended hundreds of events for the school district. 100% attendance record for all meetings, board meetings, workshops, special meetings. So I will continue to try to do my best for the people, not only in District 1, but of the children for the entire county. So I'll continue that process, and thank you for your support.
All right, thank you, candidates, for joining us this evening, and that concludes the race for Escambia County School Board District 1. We're taking a short break, and when we continue, we'll have our last 2 races of the night. Stay with us.
There is nothing more important to our democratic process than having an informed electorate voting on Election Day. Good evening. I am Ed Meadows, President of Pensacola State College, thanking you for tuning into this rally, a joint presentation of the League of Women Voters, WSRE TV, and Pensacola State College. Rally allows you the opportunity to watch and listen as this election year's slate of candidates answer the tough questions concerning the needs of our community. WSRE, a service of Pensacola State College, is proud to bring this program to you as a public service. And as always, we invite your comments and suggestions about how we can further fulfill our community obligations. Let's all remember the importance of participating in the governance process by voting in the upcoming election.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Santa Rosa County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Santa Rosa County Supervisor of Elections office by phone, mail, fax, or email. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Monday, August 13th through Saturday, August 25th in Milton, Pace, and at 2 locations in the Greater Gulf Breeze area. Early voting hours each day are 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered, and be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. Welcome back to Rally 2018, where you get a chance to meet the candidates in the upcoming primary election. Again, that happens August 28th.
We continue our coverage now with the race for Escambia County School Board District 2. There are 3 candidates in this contest. Let's meet them now, beginning in alphabetical order. Our first candidate is Mr. Paul H. Fetzko. Welcome. Hello. Seated next to him is Mr. Raymond Guillory. And seated next to him is Mr. Kells Hetherington. Welcome to you all. Let's begin now with our questions, and Mr. Fetzko, our first question will go to you tonight. In preparation for state-mandated school safety requirements, what additional safety measures do you think should be mandated, or do you think should be considered locally to ensure the safety of our students?
Well, locally, we have done a lot since the 2000 to get our schools hardened and prepared. All of our schools are equipped with surveillance systems and some other things that the general public may not be aware of. But with the additional emphasis on safety, especially since the Parkland incident, I think that there's some things that need to happen, such as some additional guidance and some counseling. I know that mental health counselors are being part of the legislation. I think that will go a long way to helping, but it won't help everyone. The idea of having some school social workers, someone who could intervene with students and make sure that they are able to seek guidance when that's there.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Guillory, this question next to you. What additional safety measures do you think should be considered locally to ensure the safety of our students?
Well, I want to bring the school resource officer program in-house to the school district. Just last year, right after the Parkland shooting, our sheriff's department was going through a budget crisis with the county commission, and he actually threatened to pull resource officers out of our schools. Our children's safety is non-negotiable. So I would like to bring in and start our in-school law enforcement agency so that we can have officers in our schools that are trained by and specifically for school issues concerning safety.
All right, thank you. And to you, Mr. Hetherington, do you need to have me repeat the question?
No, I understand the question. I think we need more SROs, or school resource officers, on the beat. In a place like Escambia High, which is in my district, we may have as few as 2 SROs on the beat, and there may be 2,000 students in that school. We also need to make sure that our security efforts are being properly marshaled, because already in 2018 we've had 3 instances of guns being brought into school, and one of those weapons was a loaded gun. So we need to have someone over the top making sure that we're taking action and the action is working.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. And we begin our next question with Mr. Guillory. What specific qualifications and/or background do you bring to the school board?
I grew up here in Escambia County. I went to Escambia County schools, Warrenton, Escambia High School, PHS. I have 2 daughters in the school system at the moment. I have another daughter who next year will be starting pre-K. Some of my opponents have a little bit more experience with the school system than I do, but I do know what it's like to be a working parent in the school system. I know what it's like to have been a student and the problems that are associated with the school district and being a student. My children are having some of the same problems. A lot of these issues haven't been addressed for 20 years. I want to address these problems because I have to. I have children in the school system that I want to make sure get the best education possible. I don't want them to have the same problems that I've been having for the last 20 years.
Thank you, Mr. Guillory. Mr. Hetherington, the same question to you now, sir. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Yes.
What specific qualifications and/or background do you bring to the school board?
Look, I'm a former journalist. I worked for Tucker Carlson in Washington, D.C. as his deputy editor at the Daily Caller. I was at the Voice of America in Washington, D.C., and I know how to ask the tough questions. And we need someone who's able to ask real tough questions, because right now, the school board has allowed Escambia County Public Schools to fall into terrible shape, such that they are some of the 10 worst school districts. Escambia County schools are now among the 10 worst school districts in the entire state of Florida. That's shameful. And also, when you look at our budget, I'm a financial analyst, and I can pick out areas where we can do better. And I've already looked at the budget very closely.
Thank you, Mr. Hetherington. Mr. Fetzko, the same question to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
No, the qualifications. I started as a special education teacher in 1976. I taught deaf students, and I worked my way in administration in special education, worked with the deaf, blind, physically impaired, occupational and physical therapy, hospital homebound, and preschool handicapped, and I did that for 24 years. My last 12 years, I was the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. During that time, I worked with the rollout of No Child Left Behind, also Race to the Top. We went from being a D school district when I started to a B when I retired. And when I left, we had one D school in the entire district.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fetzko.
All right, candidates, we are up to question number 3, and Mr. Hetherington, you will get this question first. The expansion of school choice in Escambia County has resulted in the resegregation of schools. If elected, how would you address this issue?
Well, school choice is largely an illusion. Most students who want to attend a different school in the county, school district, aren't able to do that because the schools that are most often selected are simply at capacity. What we need to do is have more schools that are really good schools, and that means improving schools like Warrington Middle School, which was one of the superintendent's priorities 10 years ago, and continues to be one of the worst schools in the entire state of Florida. You know, folks, if you're looking for more of the same, my opponent Paul Fetzko is financially backed by the current superintendent. It's more of the same with folks who have just retired from the administration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hetherington. Mr. Fetzko, do you need me to repeat the
Please.
question? All right. The expansion of school choice in Escambia County has resulted in the resegregation of schools. What would you do to address this issue if elected?
What I would do first is I would look at the options that are available within the district. I would look at some magnet programs. I would ask students and parents what they were interested in and expand those kind of choices so that we would draw the students back to the schools in which they are districted. But I do need to go and say that, you know, Warrington Middle School, which keeps getting picked on, was a C school this year. Their school grade came out just recently. They went from very low performance, but they were a C. They are improving. There's room for improvement in all of our schools. We will always have a lowest quartile, but at every school we also have an upper quartile.
All right, thank you. And finally to you, Mr. Guillory.
Poverty is a big problem for our school district. Almost 40% of all the students live in poverty. And the schools that we're talking about that are failing schools, they're all in the areas of poverty. People who can take advantage of the school choices are the parents who have jobs where maybe the mother, they make enough income where one parent's at home and they're able to take advantage of school choice. In order to make sure that the schools and everything is equitable, we have to make sure that kids that are in these poverty-ridden schools that are not performing have a choice in school choice too. We have to provide transportation. A kid in Warrenton whose mother is working 2 jobs cannot take her kid and bring him to Bellevue or to bring him to Bailey. We have to make sure that every child has equal opportunity to take advantage of school choice, if that's what we're going to do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guillory.
And Mr. Fetzko, we turn now to question number 4 and begin with you. What specific qualifications and or training should be required for school resource officers? Obviously, school safety, a big issue.
There is a training program within the state of Florida that goes into school resource officers, and I know the Sheriff's Department has had that training. They've had leadership along those lines. I think that the state of the nation has really changed, and the preponderance of violence has gotten so much worse. The accessibility to weapons and things like that. The school resource officers need to also be in there working and developing relationships with the students. So there is a counseling, a mentoring, a camaraderie that needs to be developed so that students trust those officers and will report. The students need to take some self-responsibility in their safety.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Mr. Guillory, we turn now with that question to you.
I'm not a law enforcement officer. But this morning I was actually talking to David Alexander, the retired police chief for the Pensacola Police Department, and he likes the idea of bringing the law enforcement agency in-house. I would work with people like David Alexander in order to make sure that what we are doing into the school system and what we're doing for law enforcement for school safety is all that we can be doing, and that every officer who walks across the threshold of a Escambia County school is trained and qualified to the best of our abilities.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guillory. Mr. Hetherington, same question to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What specific qualifications and or training should be required for school resource officers?
I think that the training and qualification should be just like a police officer. All too often we're treating situations in the school system with kid gloves. We're removing students out the back door who misbehave, and they're walking right back in the front door a few days later. It's not working. And it often turns out that a few students are disrupting the educational environment for the majority. It's 1 or 2 all the time, and parents are sick of it. And if I'm on the school board, things will change.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, we are up to our final question this evening, and Mr. Guillory, it'll go to you first. How can the school board ensure that appropriate resources are available for helping students who are dealing with domestic violence or other issues at home?
This question is near and dear to me. We have to make sure, and it's a school safety issue too, about bringing in counselors and people to work with our students at the schools. What I would want to see is a partnership with the community so that we can bring in organizations like what is it, Kids House, Safe House, these kind of organizations in, that we work with our school medical officers, our school nurses, so that they are more able to identify these types of problems. Right now we have a law, by law, that you have to report. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hetherington, this question to you. Do you need me to repeat it?
Would you please?
All right. How can the school board ensure that appropriate resources are available for helping students who are dealing with domestic violence and other issues at home?
We've got to put more trust in the frontline faculty, the teachers in the homeroom, the English teachers, the math teachers. And right now, all too often, the current school administration second guesses teachers all the time. They don't pay them very well either. Go next door to Okaloosa or Santa Rosa County, and a teacher doing the same thing will make $15,000 more. I've talked to some of these people. We need to support our own faculty members, and then things will begin to improve, and then students will be taken care of.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fetzko.
To deal with domestic violence and things that are happening in the home, we have some things underway, especially like at C.A. Weiss Elementary, a full-service school, where there are other specialities that come into the school. We have medical people, you have counseling people, You have other agencies that are working there. The problem has been not that the school district has refused to come up with funding to create more full-service schools, but the other agencies lack the funding and they're not able to put their part into it. We have guidance counselors, especially at the secondary level, who need to be freed up from some of the tasks that they do with record keeping so they really can counsel students.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fetzko, and thank you, candidates. We are now finished with the questions and turn to closing statements.
And Mr. Guillory, we last started with you, so moving down the line, we now begin closing statements with Mr. Hetherington. You have 45 seconds.
Thanks, and thank you for having us here tonight. Look, I represent a fresh perspective, and I've been going around and I've talked to 4,000 people and visited 8,000 homes with my message. We cannot allow the school district to continue to fail and allow our school board members to say the status quo is fine with them, because it's not. We can do better. And a vote for me means we'll send a message to people like Malcolm Thomas that enough is enough and we will begin to turn things around. I'm committed and I'll fight hard for my district and for everyone in the Escambia County School District.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hetherington. Mr. Fetzko, 45 seconds, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I am not a politician. I've been an educator my whole life. I am not an advocate, but I know education, and I know that one of the biggest problems that we have has to do with academics. And I have the background to be able to bring that from the board's perspective. Now, the way the board operates and the superintendent operates, the board has more of a legislative agenda that they work on. The superintendent is kind of the executive branch and he implements. They've got to work together. If you are at odds, you'll never get anything accomplished. If it's not a team effort, it definitely will fail. And it begins with the teachers. The teachers need to have the ultimate responsibility for what happens instructionally in their classroom.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fetzko. Mr. Guillory?
The most important and most needed person in our school system isn't on this dais today. It's you at home. Parents, teachers, we need your involvement. If you own a local business or you're involved in a local organization, we need you involved in our schools. And if you elect me to the school board, I will do my utmost to make sure that we include the community back into our schools. We need parents, we need teachers, we need business leaders, and we need organizational leaders organized to make our school system the best it can be. So I hope you come out on August 28th. Vote for me. My name is Ray Guillory for the Escambia County School Board for District 2.
All right. Thank you so much, candidates.
All right, and that concludes our race for Escambia County School Board District 2.
And we'll have our final race of the evening when Rally 2018 continues.
Thanks for watching this year's rally event on WSRE TV. I am Elizabeth King. Ray Hudkins and I serve as co-presidents of the League of Women Voters of the Pensacola Bay Area. For nearly 30 years, the leagues here and in Okaloosa County have provided questions for events like tonight's forum as a service to our local communities. Our democracy is based on active participation by informed citizens, and voting is an important way to participate. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, which means we don't support or oppose parties or candidates. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and encourage informed and active participation in government. This rally is one of the ways for us to make accurate and nonpartisan information available to voters. You can also contact us for explanations of amendments and other ballot issues. We invite women and men to attend our public events or to join us as members of the League. For more information, visit lwvpba.org or lwvokaloosa.org. And please remember to be an informed voter this year.
There are 3 ways to cast a ballot in Escambia County: by mail, early voting, or at your precinct on Election Day. To vote by mail, contact the Escambia County Supervisor of Elections office. You can write, phone, fax, email, log on to their website, or ask in person at the supervisor's office on Palafox Place in downtown Pensacola. Ballots must reach the Supervisor of Elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Early voting takes place from Saturday, August 18th through Saturday, August 25th at the 8 locations listed on the screen. Early voting times are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Supervisor of Elections office and from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. at all other locations. On the day of the primary election, Tuesday, August 28th, voting takes place at your polling location from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. You must vote in the precinct in which you live and are registered. To verify your precinct, log on to escambiavotes.com. Be sure to bring photo and signature ID with you. Welcome back to Rally 2018 here on WSRE TV, where you are hearing from the candidates in the upcoming primary election.
Earlier tonight, we heard from candidates for Okaloosa County School Board as well as Santa Rosa and Escambia County School Boards. And we are moving now to the last race of the night, the contest for Escambia County School Board District 3. There are 4 candidates in this race.
And it is time to meet them now in alphabetical order. Our first candidate is Miss Laura Dorch Edler. Seated next to her is Miss Lee Hallmark Hansen. And seated next to her is Mr. Larry Williams, Sr. And seated next to him is Mr. Walker Wilson. Candidates, welcome.
Thank you.
And it is time now for our first question, and moving in alphabetical order. We begin our first question with Miss Edler. Issues have been raised regarding the performance and fiscal oversight of charter schools. How can the school board improve its oversight of these schools?
I believe that there is enough administrative people within the school district to provide the monitoring and oversight of these schools. I don't see a reason why that would not occur.
Thank you so much, Ms. Edler. Ms. Hansen, this question goes to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
If you would, please.
Issues have been raised regarding the performance and fiscal oversight of charter schools. How can the school board improve its oversight of these schools?
I think that one of the things that happens is that the district has in the past given the schools an opportunity to succeed, and they failed to jump in order to keep them from failing, maybe giving them a little bit too much free rein. And so I know that during this last year we had an issue with one of our charter schools, and so the decision was made after I joined the board that it needed to be closed. So I think by making sure that we monitor very closely not only the financial health of the schools but also how they're doing academically is going to be very important in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Hansen. Mr. Williams, the question goes to you now, sir. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Please.
All right. Issues have been raised regarding the performance and the fiscal oversight of charter schools. What can the school board do to have more oversight of these schools?
I think principally what they should do is assess and go back to when the charter schools originally was chartered, with their purpose, their mission, and what they would do with their tasking. So annually, they should be looked at as to how fiscally responsible they are with the money they're given, whether or not they're meeting their obligations, whether or not the training programs that they're designed to train or specialize in teaching children is being met, and if that's doing fiscally sound or not. And if not, then it goes back to whether or not their mission, purpose is clear, and what the money has been allotted for, and being responsible in controlling or monitoring what the money is spent for based upon the charter mission.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And Mr. Wilson, the question to you now, sir. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Sure.
Okay. Issues raised, of course, regarding the performance as well as the fiscal oversight of charter schools. What can the school board do to improve oversight of those schools?
I think the biggest thing that we can do as a school board is make sure that we're getting monthly updates from these charter schools on where they stand fiscally. It's too late in the game when we have these schools come in when they're in a troubled year and we're starting to see some issues arise. We need to know about these issues up front and not on the back end. So I think continuing the conversation with those charter schools is really what's going to help us see the fiscal responsibility portion of that.
All right, thank you. We're now up to question number 2, and it will go first to you, Ms. Hanson. The millage rate to support public schools has not been increased in many years. Please comment on whether the school board should request an increase in this rate to meet the rising cost of education.
Right. In fact, the millage rate has gone down a little bit. One of the things that I always say is that I am a fiscal conservative, and that means not that I'm cheap, but that I realize the value of spending money, and I want to make sure that we spend it wisely. I read recently that whether a school district spends $5,000 per student or $15,000, there's always a sense that a little bit more would be better. What I'd really like to do is figure out exactly how we're spending the money, because I think that there's probably a way that we can get more bang for our buck by tweaking some of the ways that we do spend money.
All right, thank you. And this question next to you, Mr. Williams. Comment please on whether you think the school board should request an increase in the millage rate.
I think the bigger issue is realizing where the biggest needs are and how can we meet those needs. If those needs can be met under current millage rates, then I would not propose an additional rate. But it appears that as the state continues to place upon the local districts more responsibilities, particularly for testing and those kind of issues, then it raises the issue where we would need as a district perhaps more money to meet the educational obligations of the school board. So until we can get the state to cooperate, then that is an option.
All right, thank you. And now to you, Mr. Wilson.
I think I'm totally not in favor of raising the millage rate at all. I think what we need to do is be a good steward of your tax dollars here locally and make sure that the money we're bringing in from our community is being spent here in our community. And that's why I've been a big proponent of the covenant for the community right here in Escambia County, and the school board needs to pass that so that we can look at our bid process here by hiring local companies. I also think this takes a school board member that's going to be engaged in Tallahassee and let the folks in Tallahassee that are representing us there know that we actually need more funds than the 47 cents per student that we've gotten this past year.
All right, thank you. And finally, the question to you, Ms. Edler.
Thank
what
you.
do you think about the school board and whether it should request an increase in the millage rate?
I believe the school board should look from within to see where the waste is. If there are any areas that we can cut, I believe that we need to do that. That would be a last-ditch effort for me to increase millages.
All right, thank you.
All right, and we turn now to question number 3, and we begin with you, Mr. Williams. Here is your third question. If elected as one of the 5 school board members, what will be your top priority during your term?
My top priority will be voluntary pre-kindergarten, and that is to get every 4-year-old enrolled in a VPK program. In addition to that, a priority I would have would be to create a career day for middle schools, and along with that, I would like every high school 9th grader to be counseled on the front end of entering high school about the courses they're going to select and also goals they're going to set and raising those expectations. And we will repeat that with every 10th grader, 11th grader, 12th grader, so that when they graduated from high school, they would either be trained in Votech Academy or they'd be ready to go on to college.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Wilson, this question now to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
I'm good, thank you though. The biggest issue that District 3 has is the 3rd grade reading level. When you look at District 3, we've only got 31% of our 3rd graders on grade level reading, and it's completely unacceptable when the rest of the county is hovering at 62%. We've got to get a plan in place to get these students into more one-on-one interaction with small groups when it goes to reading. If we can't teach these children to read at a young age, then the rest of it's not going to matter. We've also got to make sure that we pass this covenant for the community and make a promise to the citizens of Escambia County that we're going to hire local talent first before we look elsewhere.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Edler, the question now to you. Would you like for me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
What will be your top priority during your term if you are elected to school board?
I have several top priorities, but I will only focus on one for right now, and that's dropout prevention. I believe that there are too many children who are being pushed out of school for disciplinary reasons. I believe that I would advocate for a social worker in every school. We have 51 schools and 8 social workers to intervene with the social society issues that are occurring. And I believe that if we don't stop the dropout, we're not going to have any children in school for the other programs that are advocated for.
Thank you, Ms. Edler. And Ms. Hanson.
I was actually appointed in December, and so I've already begun working on my top priority, which is providing a quality education to every child. And what that means is emphasizing the trades, helping kids who are not academically inclined stay engaged through high school. It means kids coming in the front door, working with their parents to help the parents understand how much power they have in their child's education. So making the school system work for every single child, and that's what I'm doing so far, and I'll continue if I'm elected.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. And we turn now to question number 4, beginning with Mr. Wilson. Realizing that there is a national shortage of teachers, what is the role of the school board in attracting highly qualified teachers, considering the limited funds for teacher pay?
So I think one of the biggest things that we can do is do our best to get away from this one-year contract that we have new teachers on. It shows no faith in our ability for them to do a good job in the classroom. We've got to begin to support them in that way. And I think we've got to go have a real conversation with the folks in Tallahassee that we've got to be able to provide a good paycheck for these teachers with one of the most important jobs in our country.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Edler, we turn now to you with this question. Realizing that there is a national shortage of teachers, what role should the school board play in attracting those highly qualified teachers, especially in the face of limited funds?
I believe it's important that teachers have the resources that they need in order to do their jobs. I also believe that we need to look at the pay for teachers. And we need a good recruitment package where we can send people out in various areas and recruit qualified teachers to teach within their field. I believe we have too many people teaching out of their fields. And so I believe that if you treat people right, pay them well, they will stay.
Thank you, Ms. Edler. Ms. Hanson, the question now to you.
Right. There is a shortage of teachers, and so one of the things that I think is super important is we need to make sure that we as professionals value our teachers. When I joined the Navy in 1980, people said, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Because it wasn't a popular thing to do. And now many years later, people are falling all over themselves trying to thank me for my service. So there can be a shift in attitude, and I think we need to work on that. We can also provide professional development for our teachers. They need leadership opportunities within their teaching cadre. And so there are things that we can do that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Mr. Williams, question now to you, sir.
Yeah, I think teaching is a very noble and honorable profession. And I think they should be treated in such a way, developed in a way in which they want to continue as teachers. I think they should be paid a comparable salary as a professional. And I also would say that from the state level, that if they're going to impose new testing, that there should be a timeline, a period of time in which they help teachers prepare to pass that test, as opposed to not being allowed to continue to teach. So teaching is an honorable profession. I think we should do what we can to develop them personally.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
All right, we are up to our final question this evening for our final series of candidates here, and it will go to you first, Ms. Edler. The expansion of school choice in Escambia County has resulted in the resegregation of schools. If elected, how would you address this issue?
One of the things that I would like to see done is neighborhood schools to return. I also believe that we have got to have a change in mindset. A lot of parents are leaving because they don't feel respected. And so if we change that environment to make it conducive for people to want to be there, I believe that they will want to be there. Recently, we don't have a middle school in District 3, and students are being bused, and that's been one of my concerns. That busing went out with desegregation, and that is a very sly way to bring about segregation because the students have to apply to go to the new school. And I don't believe if it's taxpayers' dollars, it's a free education, you should not have to apply to go to that school.
All right, thank you, Ms. Edler. And to you now, Ms. Hanson. The expansion of school choice in Escambia County has resulted in the resegregation of schools. If elected, how would you address this issue?
I think this is the answer that answers all of them, and that is to make the schools better so that parents want to bring their kids back into District 3 schools. We have seen an exodus of many students because of school choice, and so by concentrating on our schools in District 3, bringing them up, rewarding teachers, and helping parents understand the absolute impact that they have on their child's education, we'll make the schools better again, and then watch the influx of students come in. Thanks.
Thank you. To you now, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I think this is a choice is our charter schools really is a pseudo way of being called a private school with public school money. So what I would think is that we should propose the same monies to be spent and to give public schools the freedom to do what is required to educate our children so that we can reduce the exodus of students going to charter schools, and that we should allocate money. In the current bill from the national level, we've increased the money going to charter schools, but we've reduced the money going to education in general. So put the money in public schools and we'll get the better results as we're hoping to do in charter schools.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. And now to you finally, Mr. Wilson.
I think the biggest thing you've got to do is work on the third grade reading score to make the choice to stay in District 3, because right now we're simply failing at doing the basics. When we can't teach these children how to read, there's no other choice than to leave. And so that's all that we're giving to parents. We need to make sure that we're focusing on our kindergarten through third grade programs that we've got in District 3. And we've also got to make sure that we're ready for vocational education at our high school level to give these career academies what they need and the job training and work skills in the classroom for jobs here in Escambia County at Pensacola High School.
Rebuttal, Mr. Williams?
Yeah. What I like to say, it is important. Reading is fundamental. There is no issue with that. But in addition to that, the thing that segregates charter schools is because those who can afford to leave are the ones who are taking advantage of it. So what we have to do is we have to increase the opportunities for the ones who can't afford to go. And transportation principally is one of those reasons that prevent not only people from going to charter school, but it also is a big preventer of people from participating in the VPK program at the local schools and local private centers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams, and thank you, candidates. It is now time for closing statements, and each of you will have 45 seconds. And continuing down the line, we begin with Ms. Hanson for your closing remarks.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for having us here tonight, because I love the idea of the voters actually getting to know us a little bit. I was appointed in December, and for the last 8 months I've worked really hard to learn about the intricacies of the budget process. I went to every school within the district and was a little surprised that they had never seen someone from the school board before. I've visited parents, I've gone to many of the events at our schools, and what I've found is that people are working really hard, but they don't necessarily have the tools and the professional development to help them help every child. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hanson. Mr. Williams, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks would be that I too am a United States Navy veteran, and I've served my country. In addition to serving my country, I have lived in the same community for over 50 years where we've had issues with landfills, and in those issues we spearheaded the removal of toxic landfills from our community. So the same way I serve my country, serve my community, I like the opportunity to serve the next generation of children in doing what we've talked about earlier with VPK for elementary or 4-year-olds, career day for middle schools, and counseling every 9th grader when they come into school. So as I've canvassed communities, I want you to know that I share your vision and that I hear your voice. I'd like for you, let's continue to work together and make me your choice on August the 28th. A vote for me is a vote for our children, our next generation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. And Mr. Wilson, finally to you.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and WSRE for hosting us tonight. And I just want to ask the voters, over this whole process of the past year of this election, who's given you the choice and a platform to grade us on as a candidate? Who's been the person that's laid out a plan and shown you how to get it done? How are we going to improve our 3rd grade reading scores? By breaking these classrooms into smaller sizes. We've got to work with the state to bring a middle school back to District 3 so these students can go to school in their neighborhoods. We've got to work with the state and the federal government on creating career academies and vocational training programs in our high schools that relate to the jobs here in Escambia County. And we've got to pass the covenant for the community to make a promise to you, the citizens of Escambia County, that we're going to hire companies locally. So when you go to vote on August 28th, vote Walker Wilson for School Board District 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Ms. Edler, you get the final word tonight. 45 seconds for your closing statement.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having us here. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach the finish line in this election, I want to have you to think seriously about our educational system, specifically the number of children who are dropping out of school, the number of children who are in jail, failing schools, and the inability to hire a sufficient number of quality teachers. It is difficult when you're looking at the candidates to decide who is the most qualified to handle this position. I suggest to you that I have experienced the same barriers and challenges that the children of today. I'm qualified. I have worked with children in the classroom, worked with children and their families in the community. I bring a wealth of knowledge. August the 28th, I'm asking you to go to the polls and vote for Laura Deutsch Edler, Escambia County School Board District 3. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Edler, and thank you to our candidates. And that is a wrap for this night's edition of Rally 2018, but we do have one more night of primary election coverage ahead.
That's right. On Wednesday night, we will return with the race for mayor of Pensacola, as well as for Escambia County Commission Districts 2 and 4 and Santa Rosa Commission Districts 2 and 4. We certainly hope you will join us then.
Our thanks to the League of Women Voters, Okaloosa and Walton counties, and Pensacola Bay Area for their participation in Rally 2018.
And our thanks also to Pensacola State College, and a reminder that Rally will be available shortly for viewing online at WSRE.org. And to please tune in later tonight for WSRE's Pledge Drive in support of public television. It's because of viewers like you that we're able to present vital public service programs like Rally. Thank you for being with us tonight, and please join us again tomorrow night on Wednesday for more of Rally 2018 right here on WSRE TV, PBS for the Gulf Coast. Have a great evening.